Good afternoon and Chag Purim Sameach. It's Thursday, March 24th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. An IDF soldier was wounded in the shoulder and hand this morning after being stabbed by two Palestinian terrorists in Hebron's Tel Rumeida neighborhood. He was evacuated to the Shaarei Tzedek hospital for treatment. The two 21-year-old terrorists were shot dead on the spot. Today's stabbing occurred shortly before the Jewish residents of Hebron were set to carry out their annual Purim Carnival parade. Last night, the army imposed a closure on the West Bank that will remain into effect until midnight Saturday. During this period, West Bank Palestinians are barred from entering Israel with the exception of humanitarian or medical assistance. Following the incident in Hebron, the B'Tselem Human Rights Organization released an amateur video footage showing a soldier shooting one of the Palestinian attackers in the head, even though he was already lying on the road. It's unclear if the Palestinian was alive at the time. Nevertheless, the IDF spokesman called it a grave incident, saying it goes against the spirit of the army and what is expected from soldiers and commanders. The spokesman said the military police have launched an investigation into the matter and that the soldier in question has been suspended from duty until the end of the probe. U.S. President Barack Obama expressed doubts of a peace deal being reached between Israel and the Palestinians before he leaves office. Speaking during his visit to Argentina, Obama reiterated his support for a two-state solution, saying it is the only way Israel and the Palestinians will be able to live peacefully side by side.
If you look at the demographics of the region and the West Bank and Gaza and the Arab-Israeli population, it's growing much faster than the Jewish population. If you don't find a way to resolve the conflict, then over time, you're going to have to make a choice. Do we preserve this as a Jewish state, but it is now no longer a democracy? Because if it was, then the Jewish people would be a small minority. Or do you preserve the democracy, but now it's no longer a predominantly Jewish state? Right? You're going to have to make a choice. The only way to avoid that choice, if you want to preserve it as a predominantly Jewish state and a democracy, then you have to give the Palestinian people and the Arab people who are living in that community their own state in order to have self-determination. And I hope that that happens, and even once I'm no longer president, I will continue to try to promote that peaceful dialogue. But I will be the first one to confess this is not something I was able to get done. And I'm not that hopeful that it's going to happen in the next 9 months. It's been 60 years, it's not going to happen in the next 9 months.
One of the terrorists involved in the Brussels bombing attacks was known to Turkish authorities and was deported from Turkey to Belgium in 2015. Khaled el-Barkawi was identified as the terrorist who blew himself up in the second carriage of a metro near the EU institutions. His older brother, Ibrahim, was one of the two bombers at the Brussels airport. Speaking at a news conference last night, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said Barkawi was detained last year in the southern Turkish province of Gaziantep, near the Syrian border, and was deported to the Netherlands and later handed over to Belgium. Erdogan stressed that despite Turkey's warning that the man was a foreign terrorist fighter, Belgian authorities couldn't find a link to terrorism. Meanwhile, a manhunt in Belgium continues for additional suspects believed to have been involved in Tuesday's bombing attacks amid heightened security. Europe will also have to deal with the hundreds of Islamic State operatives who returned to the continent are believed to be preparing for more attacks. IBA's Mark Dudkevich has this report.
Israel's security officials warned their Belgian counterparts of the numerous security failures they found at Brussels International Airport during a safety check they conducted some weeks ago. The lapse in security was discovered during routine checks conducted in airports around the world that are used by Israel. Belgian officials said today that 300 people wounded in Tuesday's attacks are from some 40 different countries. 61 remain in critical condition, suggesting that the death toll is likely to rise. Meanwhile, in Brussels, a manhunt continues for a third suspect and possibly fourth suspect involved in the bombings. Belgian officials named Najim Lashrawi as one of the suspects believed to have accompanied the two brothers, Ibrahim and Khaled Bakrawi, who blew up at Brussels airport and at the metro station Tuesday. Lashrawi is suspected of making the bombs used in the Brussels attacks, as well as those used in Paris attacks last year. A third suitcase containing explosives found by the authorities at the airport was defused. Belgian officials have not ruled out that Lashrawi may have been the second bomber at the airport, and that a possible fourth suspect connected to the bombings may still be on the run. A search in an apartment used by the brothers uncovered explosives, chemical agents used to make bombs, and an ISIS flag. A cryptic note found by security forces believed to have been written by one of the brothers suggests other members of the terror cell may still be on the loose. Belgian officials believe the two brothers had ties to Saleh Abdeslam, the key suspect in the Paris massacres, who was arrested in Brussels Friday after 4 months on the run. An estimated 5,000 Europeans travelled to Syria to join the Islamic State. Officials believe between 400 to 600 ISIS operatives who were trained specifically to launch suicide attacks have returned to Europe, set up sleeper cells and are lying low, waiting to receive commands. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
The attacks in Brussels should be a wake-up call to Europe, and countries there should be reassessing their airport security protocol. This, according to the former security chief of Ben Gurion Airport.
The terminal building is the heart of the airport. And if you want to protect the airport, you need to start your security arrangements at the entrances of the airport, meaning every car, every driver, every passenger has to be checked before he entered the public area of the airport, which is not done in any country all over the world. The basic conclusion is that 99.9% of the passengers are not terrorists. Therefore, you have to define among the 100% of the passenger the one who is the terrorist, meaning that putting energy, manpower, time, technology, checking all the passengers is a waste of time and a waste of energy. This is the basic logic that stands behind the profile system.
It's Thursday, and joining us now in the studio to shed some light on the top news stories of the week is Amot Sasa'el, a senior columnist for the Jerusalem Post, the Dow Jones Market Watch. So Amot, let's begin with Brussels and the bombing there. What does this place Israel?
I think Israel's know-how and experience on this front will now become a lot more demanded than it was previously. Israel has unfortunately earned over the recent decades a great deal of experience in what is called low-intensity warfare, both militarily and technologically and administratively. And things of the sort that have just been mentioned here by our own airport expert will now become extremely relevant and will raise a great deal of curiosity, certainly in Europe and also in other places in the world. And I think Israel will, in this regard, now be much more courted than it was previously.
Well, last night, the Prime Minister had a quick press conference, and he said that there was no difference between terrorism everywhere else in the world and the terrorism that Israel faces. Really? Is he linking the two, the Palestinian terrorism with the ISIS terrorism?
Well, the recent terrorism that we face, in other words, ever since the Temple Mount events of last year, is indeed driven by fundamentalism. And the great tragedy of our situation, among its many other tragic aspects, but the biggest in my view, is that this narrative and this rationale of fundamentalism was adopted by the Palestinian Authority led by Abu Mazen himself. He never stood up to this, and that is why this wave of terror here is indeed very reminiscent of what Europe is currently experiencing.
Now, ISIS put out a statement saying that they attacked the Crusader Belgium and the Christendom of Europe, and it's because of the war Islam has against Christianity. So does this marginalize Israel in some way?
In terms of ISIS itself, yes. I, in this regard, am simply following what our colleague Ehud Yari, the great Middle East expert, has explained yesterday. In other words, that ISIS makes plain that its agenda is focusing on the great historic clash between Islam and Christendom. And in this regard, Israel and the Jewish people and the Jewish faith are marginal. This does not at all mean that the rest of the terror that we face, in other words, Hamas and Hezbollah and others here in our own arena are part of this. It's a separate opera. But as far as ISIS itself is concerned, yes, their clash, by their own explanation and in the wake of, in the light of their own actions, is indeed about a clash with Christendom.
But you can't dismiss the fact that they said they do want to attack the Jewish state.
They've said that, but they made it plain in a recent statement that their major theater is Europe and their major aim is Christendom, and the Jews, they said it for the record, are marginal in this regard as far as they're concerned.
Amos, let's look at the local issues. And the Haaretz newspaper today had an interesting poll that says that Israel is ready for an upheaval, but the ones to do the upheaval are not the Labour Party or the Yesh Atid, but rather maybe renegades from within the Likud party. What's your take on this?
I think that's voodoo politics. Whoever phrased this question and the way it was hyped later when reported assumes that the current Israeli political configuration is about personalities rather than issues, and that's unfounded. The personalities are important, but in terms of what we face today, there is a major experience shared by the average aged Israeli voter and by the political mainstream, which is, the way the voters understand it, it is the failure of the peace process that was led by the left. This is what the voter is asking the left to give responsible answers for, and not to give new personalities and new faces. Having said this, the specific configuration that this poll brought forth, which is led by former Chief of Staff Gabi Ashkenazi, flanked by former Likud Minister Gideon Saar and current Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon, who's also former Likud. I don't think that this configuration is what will undo Likud. This is the kind of configuration that will siphon votes from the center-left, primarily from Lapid.
But we're a year after elections, and we're still talking about putting together coalitions and
That's
changes.
the Israeli pastime. Yeah.
Amos Asa, always a pleasure to have you on our show. Thanks.
Thank you, Arya. Chag Sameach.
The Beersheba District Court has indicted an Islamic Jihad master hacker for penetrating into Air Force drones as well as police and airport computers. The incident is considered a major cyber success for the terrorist organization. More in this report.
This is Majid Awida, a 23-year-old electronic engineer from Gaza who was able to hack into the video downloads of Air Force drones. Awida is accused of monitoring Israeli footage showing real-time interception of rockets fired by terrorists where they were stored, by so allowing Israel to take precautionary measures. According to the charges, Awida, already in 2012, modified a scanner purchased in the United States and smuggled it in through tunnels from Egypt in order to penetrate Air Force drone communications. Experts tried to deflect the damage, saying that highly sensitive data was better encrypted and safer from hacking. It turns out that Awida was actually a member of the Palestinian delegation to the Arabs Got Talent television show in Lebanon. He was arrested in February when traveling from the Gaza Strip to Ramallah and questioned by the Shin Bet. His lawyer says the state has exaggerated his hacking skills, but security sources said he told interrogators that he was able to develop a program that could also follow airplanes at Ben Gurion Airport, including viewing passenger lists and aircraft type. He also hacked into the Police Road Safety Authority. A few months ago, Edward Snowden revealed that the UK and United States were able to hack into Israeli Air Force encrypted data through its listening posts in Cyprus. Israel has not yet reacted to the reports. Still, the Awida incident is a red light for the security establishment.
President Rivlin called the pro-Palestinian BDS movement clear anti-Semitism with the aim of harming Israel. The president made the comments during a meeting last night with Jewish merchants from settlements in Judea and Samaria. Present at the discussions were representatives of the Lev HaOlam organization who, together with Sumerian residents and the regional council there, aid small businesses affected by the boycott of their products. The organization purchases an array of products from Jewish businesses and dispatches them to customers worldwide. Rivlin stressed that no one can cast doubt on the historic connection between the land of Israel, our country, and our homeland. In keeping with the spirit of Purim holiday, President Reuven Rivlin and his wife Nechama today paid a surprise visit to the home of their neighbors in order to give them a festive mishloach manot, the traditional Purim basket filled with sweets and delicacies. One apartment the first couple visited was the home to a group of young roommates living on their street. The 4 lucky recipients are university students studying in Jerusalem. The president and his wife wished their new friends a happy Purim, and then they crossed back the street to their official residence.
כן, אני שהייתי סטודנטית גרתי ברחוב כצנלסון. ולמדתי ביולוגיה, אז איפה שאני מצא מכון ון ליר, היו הצריפים של המחלקה לגנטיקה.
אהלן, פורים שמח. פורים שמח לכל עם ישראל. פורים שמח.
Staying with the spirit of Purim holiday, and thousands took to the streets in the cities across the country to take part in the annual Adliada parades. You're looking at images from the festive Purim march. Well, hopefully get these images up in a minute. And the parades featured this year's dozens of fairy tale figures, huge-sized dragons and giant Disney character floats. A festive delight for revelers of all ages who arrived to strut their costumes and celebrate the colorful holiday. And a reminder to our local viewers, time flies, especially tonight when Israel switches to daylight savings time. It happens overnight when 2 a.m. becomes 3 a.m. For those of you who don't want to stay awake till 2 a.m., you could move your clocks and watches and cell phones forward 1 hour before going to sleep. Remember, spring forward. Daylight savings time will stay in effect until the 30th of October. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange was closed today because of the holiday. And the IBA weather team says temperatures will drop tomorrow, but it will still be unseasonably warm and hazy. Weekend calls for scattered thunder showers and even hail. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Well, that brings us to the end of this broadcast. I'll be back on Sunday for another daily edition of IBA News. I'm Ariel O'Sullivan, wishing you a Chag Purim Sameach, a great weekend, and Shalom from Jerusalem.